Attorney General Merrick Garland denounced what he called an escalation of attacks against the Justice Department during a Thursday speech that got fiery and emotional at times.
Our norms are a promise that we will not allow this nation to become a country where law enforcement is treated as an apparatus of politics.
Garland's comments came amid a rise in threats against not only Justice Department employees, but other law enforcement officials and members of Congress. He sounded the alarm about what he called worrying spike of these threats during congressional testimony back in June. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane has been following this story. He joins us now from Capitol Hill. Scott, what prompted the timing? Why now for the Attorney General to hold this press conference?
It was quite striking he did it publicly, John. This was an internal meeting of Department of Justice officials and employees to whom Merrick Garland was speaking. He could have done it on Zoom or in a windowless conference room. Instead, he found an auditorium, a microphone, and invited cameras to make an external message out of this, too. Two different themes here, and they are happening about 50 days away from an election. And I think that may have been part of the timing here, is to send a message at an impactful moment that the department must not be caught up in politics, will not be caught up in politics, will not be an extension of political arms. It's been a consistent message from him. He wanted to amplify it today by saying it in front of a broader audience. But also, speaking to what we've been hearing over the past 48 hours from local election officials, from local county clerks, that there is a targeting, a menacing of public officials going on in this election cycle. And what the Attorney General said today is that, yes, he recognizes his employees at the Department of Justice are facing harassment, menacing, and threats simply for doing their jobs. Trying to say, I think in some form, John, we have your back and we see it.
So he's talking about political influence, but is there a subtext here about which side, whether it's Donald Trump and his allies or Democrats? Is he pointing, even in the subtext, fingers at one side or another?
Oh, it's a really good question. And he didn't name names. He didn't name parties. He is a particularly effective messenger at the Department of Justice for why the department must be apolitical. He faces questions about Donald Trump all the time and often responds with, this department stays clear and free from politics. Was there a subtext? Well, let's talk about the timing here. He's giving this message that the Department of Justice will not be an extension of a political arm, of a political part of this government, days after Donald Trump posted on social media about the need to prosecute certain people, donors, lawyers, some campaigns for their political activities. It's hard to escape the juxtaposition of Trump's social media posts and Merrick Garland saying we will not be an extension of politics.
Okay, I've got a couple other matters in Washington for you. One is that on Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security declared that January 6th, 2025, so 4 years after the attack on the Capitol, they declared it a national special security event. Is that always the case for that date, or is there something new that's warranted that special security measure?
It is not always the case. And let's take a step back. Imagine you're in a pre-January 6, 2021 world, and somebody said the ministerial electoral certification needs to be a national security event. You'd go, why? That sounds crazy. It's such a mundane thing. We're in a post-January 6, 2021 world, and the congressional officials with whom I'm speaking today say they want to send Homeland Security extra help, extra protection, extra reinforcement. We'll take it. No harm there. But I talked to a few members of Congress who said, if you're trying to take solace in the Capitol being better protected January 6, 2025, you are fighting the old war, the last war. This is not where we feel vulnerable right now. It's the softer targets elsewhere in the country after November 5th. I spoke with Jamie Raskin, a Maryland Democrat who you'll recall was on that House January 6 Select Committee. Here's what he said about the new Homeland Security posture here at the Capitol.
I think we learned on January 6th you can never have too much security because you don't know what someone's going to throw at you. You know, we can't prepare for every attempt at a political coup or a violent insurrection, but we certainly can anticipate the possibility of things happening again that happened before, and we should make sure that there's invulnerable physical security at the Capitol.
John, there is the side benefit. You say it's a national security event. You send out a bigger message to the world that we are ready, we're on a war footing.
Yes, exactly. All right, final question, Scott, and it's related. One of the ways in which mayhem grows around election time is if there is confusion, if people think that somebody's getting away with something, and if the rules aren't clear for everybody. You've also been reporting on concern that election officials are having regarding mail-in ballots, a part of the casting of votes. What's happening there?
Yeah, what they're doing, the state elected officials, the secretaries of state, both parties around the country are telling the Postal Service, get up to speed here. Check your staffing levels, check your staffing training. We've had some early indications there's a risk ballots will be delivered late or some will be returned undeliverable. There was a whole throwdown in 2020 where the Postal Service and the Postmaster General took grief for moving some equipment out of place before the election amid fears it would slow down the returns. Problems did not occur in 2020 in that sense, and they don't want it happening here. John, what I'd say is it's not a 5-alarm fire. It's just like a fire drill. Let's get up to speed. The same way if your son or daughter comes home with a bad grade on the midterms, you say, get your act together if you want the report card to look better when the semester ends.
Scott MacFarlane with the analogies and fielding all the ground balls for us. Thank you so much, Scott.